What happened to you? Covered in blood.
My high school freshman daughter, who was supposed to have gone to visit my in-laws' house, came back home with blood flowing from her forehead, so I screamed. After quickly treating her, I immediately contacted my husband. When he answered the phone, I shouted at him without thinking.
Where are you?
Didn't I tell you I'm on a business trip?
I was stunned by his unexpected response. After all, I had seen off my husband and daughter who were supposed to visit my in-laws' home 5 days ago. In front of me was my daughter with a serious injury. Seeing me confused, my daughter revealed a shocking fact. My name is Mia Smith. I am a 40-year-old part-time housewife. My husband Michael is a salesperson who visits various schools to sell high school teaching materials. He says that trust is important, and he always behaves properly, which is cool. My daughter Sophia became a high school freshman this fall. She used to be so clingy that she couldn't leave my side, but now she's so reliable that she makes dinner and waits for me when I come home from work. I was living peacefully with my husband and daughter, but 5 years ago, my mother became bedridden due to an internal illness. Since then, I've been busy with caregiving and part-time work. I couldn't even visit my in-laws' house because of my mother's illness, and I couldn't make it happen even though I thought I should go there around Christmas. However, at that time,
You don't have to push yourself. It's good that you have an understanding husband.
he went to my in-laws' house alone while joking and laughing. I felt very sorry, but I was grateful because I was busy taking care of my mother. However, 3 years ago, my mother-in-law died suddenly in an accident. My father-in-law was very depressed because they were very close, and Michael's visits to my in-laws' house increased more and more.
I'll take my father on a trip to cheer him up. I want to treat him to delicious sushi.
Furthermore, the expenses increased to $200 or $400 every time he visited my father-in-law's house. However, as someone who was not going back to my in-laws' house because I was only taking care of my mother, I couldn't say anything about the money. One day, my husband talked to me about the cost of visiting my father-in-law, as usual.
I need $700 for the next visit.
What?
I wondered if such a large amount of money was needed for just one visit, but my husband didn't tell me the details of how the money would be used. It must be necessary money. I convinced myself that it was also something to make my father-in-law happy. However, I didn't have any spare money at hand due to the sudden expense, so I had to temporarily withdraw money from the account where I had saved my daughter's tuition fees. From now on, I have to refrain from going to the hair salon for a while and not touch Sophia's money. From there, I worked hard to save money and gradually returned it to my daughter's account. Sophia's entrance exam went well, and while we were taking a break,
I want to see Sophia after a long time.
Great! I'll take Sophia and my dad out for crab. It's a reward for always working hard.
Really?
Yay!
thank you always. She never complained even though she was always being patient, and she helped me take care of my mother. I was filled with gratitude. On the morning of the day they were to leave, Sophia waved goodbye cheerfully and said she would buy souvenirs. Have fun. Everyone in the family was smiling. At that time, we had no idea that something like that would happen. It's been 5 days since Michael and my daughter went to my father-in-law's house. I was preparing lunch in the kitchen when I heard the sound of the front door opening with a bang. "Who is it?" without ringing the doorbell. I was surprised and answered it loudly as I headed for the entrance. To my surprise, Sophia was standing there with blood flowing from her forehead.
What happened?
I screamed, looking around to ask my husband what was going on, but he wasn't there. I brought my trembling daughter into the house and immediately called Michael.
Where are you?
I'm at work. Didn't I tell you I'm on a business trip since the day after I took Sophia to my father's house?
I was in great confusion.
I didn't know anything about that. And most importantly, Sophia came back home with a serious injury.
She probably just fell. Teenage girls tend to exaggerate, so don't believe everything she says. Bye.
He hung up the phone. I couldn't believe such a crazy story, so I couldn't just say yes, I see. While treating my daughter's wounds, I asked her, "What happened? Did Dad go to work?" Sophia, with a pale face and trembling lips, muttered,
Daddy pushed me.
I was surprised, but I listened to her story while gently rubbing her back. Then I found out an unbelievable fact. My husband had been keeping a secret from us, and he had hurt Sophia because she found out about it. That wasn't all. He threatened Sophia, who was bleeding, saying,
Tell someone about this. Next time, you won't get away with just an injury.
Just then, my father-in-law returned from his outing, and Sophia ran away from my in-laws' house while my husband was distracted. Fortunately, Sophia had some money, so she was able to take the train alone, but she must have been so anxious while hiding her injury and returning home. I will never forgive anyone who hurts my lovely Sophia. I was angry not only about my husband hitting our daughter but also about the secret he had been keeping. I vowed to take revenge. After hearing all of Michael's misdeeds, I picked up my smartphone to call my father-in-law, but was surprised to see a mountain of missed calls from him. Oh, I'm sorry. I was cooking and didn't notice the phone ringing.
It's okay. More importantly, Sophia had an urgent matter and went back home. I'm worried if she arrived there safely, so I called many times.
I was speechless after hearing my father-in-law's story. My husband had been covering up the fact that our daughter, who he had injured, had run away to our house with such a lie. So I told my father-in-law everything I heard from my daughter. I will take her to the hospital, so it's okay. But I can't forgive Michael. I want to punish him, so can you keep him at your house? My father-in-law agreed to help me and said he would convince Michael to stay at his house for a while. Meanwhile, I prepared to confront my husband by running around and getting everything ready. 5 days later, after the investigation of Michael's secret was completed, I headed to my father-in-law's house. When I tried to ring the doorbell, I saw my daughter running towards me, gasping for breath.
Mom, wait a minute.
I told you to wait at home.
That's impossible. I need to settle this injury.
I didn't want to show my parents fighting in front of Sophia, so I had planned to go to my father-in-law's house alone. However, Sophia was not going to be quiet.
I think I have the right to speak up too.
Sophia refused to back down. I was reluctant, but I accepted my daughter's anger and decided to fight with her. After being greeted by my father-in-law, who already knew about my plan. I entered the living room and saw my husband, who seemed to have just woken up, lying on the sofa in his pajamas and watching TV, despite it being noon. "Oh, wasn't it a business trip?" I suddenly asked, and Michael jumped up in surprise.
No. I was supposed to go, but it got canceled."
He began to make excuses. "Well, that doesn't matter. I want to know about Sophia's injury."
"Oh, yeah, it's a stinky story. She fell down the stairs and hit her forehead."
I wanted to shout at him for being so slippery, but my father-in-law spoke first.
Enough already. We know that Sophia's injury is your fault.
Sophia also raised her voice in agreement, and I glared at Michael. The guilty husband was flustered, but then he suddenly had an idea and looked proud as he spoke.
"You haven't visited my father's house for a long time, but you act like you're so great. I cherish my father more than you guys did not."
He laughed and smirked, thinking I wouldn't say anything. It was true that I hadn't said anything because I thought he was right. However, I already knew from Sophia's story that my husband's words were full of lies.
Really? Can you say that it is cherishing your father when you go back to your father's house, but let your daughter do all the housework instead of spending time with your father?
Yes. You've been lazing around at home since we came here.
Shut up. It's just this time. I'm always working hard.
I saw Michael acting so arrogantly and took out my father-in-law's account book, which I had taken in advance. It contained not only the inflow and outflow of money but also detailed records of Michael's behavior at my father-in-law's house. Let me tell you what's written here. On June 10th, I gave Michael $150 for transportation. He lounged around all day and went out at night as usual, returning in the morning. Food expenses were high because Michael was there. I read the contents in a monotone voice. According to the book, Michael lied that I didn't even pay for transportation every time he visited my father-in-law's house and received money from his father every time. Taking advantage of the fact that I didn't visit my in-laws' house, Michael had made me out to be a stingy wife and had tried to get sympathy from his father.
Aren't you ashamed of living off your parent at your age? And you received so much help from him.
You didn't even get an allowance, and you came to my house often. I felt sorry for you and did many things for you, but it was all nonsense.
We blamed him, and Michael choked on his words and fell silent. I wonder what you used the money you swindled from your father for.
Well, that's...
You don't have to say anything. You're probably just thinking of another terrible lie.
After Michael mumbled something, I ignored him and presented a certain photo in front of him.
You wanted the money so badly because you were living it up in a place like this, weren't you?
How do you know about this place?
The photo showed my husband entering a shady massage parlor. He probably didn't expect that it was so well known. Michael turned pale. In fact, this was the secret that Sophia learned during her visit. She thought that Michael was taking good care of his father, but he kept going out at night and returning in the morning. So she secretly investigated him. She installed an app on his phone that would tell her his location without Michael knowing. When Michael went out, she checked his location on her computer and found that he was always at the same place. When my daughter searched on the internet, it was a service for men at night. When she was about to call to inform me of what happened, Michael came home. He saw Sophia searching for the location and details of the place on the computer and got angry, then pushed her. Sophia hit her head on the corner of the dresser and bled. You know the rest. After hearing Sophia's story, I left my mother in the care of a professional caregiver for a few days and staked out the place to gather evidence of Michael's spending. I took photos of him entering and leaving the place. When I saw my husband, who walked into the place with a light step, I was shocked.
You used the money we saved for Sophia's tuition fees for this?
Daddy is the worst.
Given the irrefutable evidence of the photo, my husband muttered in a small voice.
It's normal for a man to do this kind of thing.
He then looked up at my father-in-law and sought his agreement with an upward glance.
What are you talking about? You can't afford to waste money on night outings when you have to pay for your child's education.
I'm tired from work too. What's wrong with taking a break?
My daughter sighed as if she were disgusted with her father's attitude.
Mom, do you know what kind of place that is?
Huh? No, I don't. I just took pictures and left.
I thought so. Here you go.
Sophia placed several sheets of paper with the place's homepage printed on them on the table. When my father-in-law and I peered inside, we saw that the girl working there was wearing a school uniform. Although everyone seemed to be an adult, it was a place where they provided services in cosplay.
Huh. I can't believe I showed my daughter this kind of world at her age.
I was filled with regret, but my daughter was unfazed.
So this is what Daddy likes. Gross.
She shivered as if she had a chill as she handed a piece of paper to her father.
You don't have to say it like that.
If the schools affiliated with your business partner find out that you love uniforms, it would be a huge problem. I can't imagine the company that sells teaching materials to the schools would continue to employ someone with such a fetish. My husband turned pale as I gave him a cold look. Oh, right. I immediately took out his schedule book. Since it had been left in his business bag, I was able to find it easily. I can see from this that all the schools you are attending are now known. Shall I contact these business partners about your lovely hobby?
Please don't do that. I'm sorry. I went too far. I'll change my ways from now on.
He must have realized that he couldn't get away with it. He began to tremble and sat down on the spot. He is apologizing desperately, but it's unforgivable that he has been going to the place for years, spending money recklessly, and even causing his daughter to get hurt.
Who would believe a liar like Daddy?
I'm ready to consult a lawyer and prepare for divorce. You will pay me compensation for the money you spent extravagantly so far. This is the end of our relationship.
No.
Don't do that. Gross.
My husband tried to cling to Sophia, but she immediately avoided him and eventually burst into tears. We looked at him with cold eyes as he cried in such a pathetic manner. The divorce was finalized soon after, and my husband was ordered to pay $10,000 for his reckless spending and $20,000 in compensation. Then, somehow, his frequent visits to that place were discovered by his company, and Michael was fired. He was also cut off by his father and now lives alone in a rundown house. He is surviving on day labor, but he can't afford to pay the compensation, so he ended up borrowing money from shady lenders and is now living in fear of debt collectors. On the other hand, I had more free time after the divorce. With my daughter's help, My mother's condition improved dramatically, and she no longer needed care. Now, the three of us women live together happily and peacefully.
How was this story? Please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.
Thank you for always taking care of Daisy and Annabelle.
My husband said as he prepared lunch for both of us. However, he had a trick up his sleeve and I lost consciousness shortly after starting to eat. The next thing I knew, I was in a hospital bed. Apparently, I survived. When I collapsed, my husband said,
"I'm finally free."
I thought he was going to kill me. My name is Vivian, and I'm 33 years old. I have a husband named Ashton who is 2 years older than me, and we have twin daughters named Daisy and Annabelle who are 5 years old. We're a family of 4. Since my husband and I both work, our daughters go to daycare. They have personalities that are very similar to mine. They're strong-willed and speak their minds, but they don't bully others. They're the type of kids who can't leave a friend alone when they're alone. They're also a bit bigger than other kids, so they're natural leaders. I think I'm a pretty straightforward person too. I'm often relied on at work, and I think I'm a bit of a big sister. On the other hand, my husband, the only man in the family, is a bit timid. I often see him being pushed around by our daughters when they ask him to take them somewhere on holidays. However, it doesn't seem like he minds being pushed around like that. I think he just wants to fulfill our cute daughter's wishes. I thought our family of 4 would continue to live together happily and cheerfully, but my husband has been changing little by little. It started with something small. His overtime work increased a little. Until now, my husband had been avoiding overtime work to spend time with our daughters. Since I have to work overtime, I used to ask him to pick up our daughters from daycare when he came home on time. However, he started working overtime once or twice a week, which was a change from before. I understand that it can't be helped if it's work. I managed to adjust my schedule and started picking up our daughters from daycare. However, our daughters were a little unhappy about it. Actually, when my husband picked them up, he bought them sweets about half the time on the way back. They complained that they couldn't get sweets anymore because I was picking them up. Well, no matter how much they complain, I'm not as sweet as my husband, so I don't intend to buy them sweets. With this kind of life continuing, my husband's overtime work is said to increase a little more. The number of days won't change, but the hours will be longer. I don't know what kind of work my husband does since we work for different companies. I couldn't bring myself to blame my husband, who looked apologetic, and had no choice but to accept it. However, after living like this for 2 months, I became curious about what was going on. So I decided to ask my husband directly. "Hey, it's been 2 months since you started working overtime. Isn't there an end in sight for your work? Can you tell me what kind of work you do?" My husband replied,
Vivian wouldn't understand even if I told you. I'm just doing my job to the best of my ability. Why are you blaming me like that?
He said this in a pretty strong tone, which I didn't expect. I know it's work, but I just wanted to know what kind of work it is. I understand that it's work. But Daisy and Annabelle are lonely. It would be nice if you could come home early once in a while. They seem to be looking forward to you picking them up from daycare. My husband replied,
Those 2 aren't looking forward to me picking them up. They're just interested in the sweets I buy them. They're not lonely.
I was speechless. I never expected my husband to say something like that. Taking advantage of the fact that I didn't answer, my husband finally said,
I'm going to be busy with work from now on.
It seemed like he wanted to end the conversation. I was so sad about my husband's change that I wondered if his personality had changed because of the overtime work. Another month passed. My husband started working overtime almost every week. On days when I couldn't finish work, I had no choice but to put our daughters in extended daycare. As a result, their bedtime became later, which I knew wasn't good for their health. But work wouldn't wait. And then my husband started going out alone even on holidays. Until recently, he would respond to our daughters' requests, but now he avoids them by saying things like, I feel like going out alone today, or, I have to work on my day off today, or, I'm tired today, so please be quiet. Our daughters look obviously lonely.
Is Daddy busy today too? Won't he play with Annabelle and me?
When she says something like this, I get sad too. So I started taking them out more. I also borrowed my parents' help to make up for the reduced time I spent with my husband. I started to think that my husband's behavior had changed too much. I began to think that this was a family crisis. And then the incident happened. It was a holiday. Our daughters were being taken care of by my parents. My husband was at home on a rare holiday and said to me,
I'll make lunch today, so let's eat together.
It had been months since my husband cooked for me. I think it was before he started working overtime. It's rare. I couldn't be happy about it, so I said this.
It's a thank you for always taking care of Daisy and Annabelle.
He started making lunch. He said he could do it alone, so he didn't let me into the kitchen. And in no time, he finished making beef stew for lunch. When he was ready, he called me to the dining room.
Okay, it's ready. Let's eat together.
He said it brightly. Even though it was lunchtime, he took out wine.
Daisy and Annabelle aren't here today, so how about some wine?
Although I thought it was really unusual, I decided to have some wine that would go well with the beef stew. Cheers! And so the meal began. The beef stew my husband made was very delicious and went well with the wine. As I ate a little more, I began to feel sick. Oh. What happened? At the same time, I started to feel sleepy. Was I already drunk? I'm usually good with alcohol. But the sickness and sleepiness only got worse, and I ended up losing consciousness. Just before I lost consciousness, I heard my husband say,
I'm finally free!
The next day, I woke up in an unfamiliar place. My father-in-law was the first to notice that I had woken up.
Vivian, are you awake? Don't worry. You're in the hospital.
Hospital? Why am I here? My questions were not answered. Then I saw my mother-in-law crying in the corner of the hospital room. What's wrong? When I spoke up, my mother-in-law approached me with a start.
Vivian, I'm really sorry about Ashton.
It seemed that my husband was involved in my hospitalization. But he wasn't here. Where is Ashton now? When I asked, my in-laws' faces clouded over a little.
I'm sorry, but after Ashton told us that you had collapsed, he disappeared without saying anything. We've been asking around since yesterday, but we don't know where he is.
That's what my mother-in-law said. Was my husband gone? I had a vague idea of where he might be. But what about my condition? My father-in-law answered that question.
It seems that there were sleeping pills and pesticides mixed in with yesterday's lunch. Vivian ate it and got sick. And the wine you drank with it doubled the effect of the sleeping pills.
Did my husband use pesticides?
Thanks to the early discovery, we were able to treat it quickly.
That's what my father-in-law said. Why did my husband contact my in-laws even though he had put pesticides in my food himself? I forgot to ask that. He must have wanted to kill me, judging from his words about being free. There were many mysteries about my husband's words and actions. My parents took care of my daughters while I was unconscious. That's why they didn't come to the hospital room. I finally understood that. I stayed in the hospital for one more day for tests and was discharged the next day. I was surprised that I was so energetic despite having eaten pesticides. My parents-in-law accompanied me with apologetic faces. I felt more sorry for them than they did for me. After I was discharged, I went to see how my daughters were doing. Even though I hadn't seen them for 3 days, it felt like a long-awaited reunion. And I asked them to stay at my parents' house for a little longer. I had to head to the battlefield. The battlefield was an apartment. I rang the intercom with determination. Then I heard a man's voice from inside. It was a voice I recognized.
Yes, who is it?
It's me. Vivian. I answered, and there was a loud noise from inside. After a while, the door opened, and my husband came out. His face was pale.
Vivian, why are you here?
That was my husband's first word. A wife should know where her cheating husband is. I said it loudly on purpose. Then my husband panicked.
Can you speak a little quieter?
He said that. Why don't you let me in? I want to meet your mistress. I said it without lowering my voice. It was a bit unfair, but it was a strategy one had to use to talk inside. My husband reluctantly let me into the room. I won my strategy. The woman inside should be named Cecilia. The reason I ended up in this apartment and why I know this woman's name is that I had a private investigator investigate it. Cecilia was a woman who looked good in a dress, unlike me, who always wore pants. This was the first time we met, but I knew from the investigation report that she had a neat personality. Well, I don't know if someone with a neat personality is really neat when they're cheating on someone else's husband. But she looked cute, and her personality was the opposite of mine. My husband asked me with a pale face.
Are you okay?
Oh, right. I forgot. My husband made me drink pesticides. And sleeping pills too. What was the meaning of these sleeping pills? I had a lot of questions to ask. I'm fine. I had a thorough examination and everything's okay. But why did you try to kill me? You called your mother early on, but you wanted to kill me? And what was the reason for the sleeping pills? I don't understand your behavior at all. Then my husband muttered something.
I didn't try to kill you. Well, maybe I thought about it at first, so I gave you sleeping pills to delay the discovery. But I got scared, so I couldn't call an ambulance, but I called my mother. If you were found, I thought my mother would take you to the hospital.
I see. So you ran away here? I said it sarcastically. But it was true.
I'm sorry. I might have thought about killing you at first, but I didn't do it, did I? So can you forgive me?
Huh? I sighed heavily. I couldn't forgive him for trying to kill me. Besides, only with such a cheap apology. I want to know what you wanted to do after trying to kill me. Did you want to remarry Cecilia, who is there? And what did you mean when you said you became free on the day you put pesticides in my food? What does that mean? I asked him a series of questions. My husband answered slowly while looking flustered.
I was going to remarry Cecilia if you were dead. I was tired. I couldn't keep up with the power of you, Daisy, and Annabelle. That's why I said I became free.
I see. So that's what it was. Was my weak-willed husband really cornered? But he was cheating on me? You cheated on me and then you're saying we cornered you? What are you talking about? You made an escape route for yourself. Who came up with this plan? If you say you came up with it because you were cornered, I can believe you, but if Cecilia is involved even a little bit, I won't forgive you. Then Cecilia spoke up.
I came up with this plan. I couldn't stand to see Ashton being cornered like that. So if you won't forgive him, then I'm also.
Was she trying to feel like a supportive wife? But she had made a very dangerous plan. So in the end, you two came up with the plan together. I understand. I recorded this testimony, so I'll file a complaint with the police. If you have anything to say in defense of your infidelity, please do. I'll record it on this voice recorder and let my lawyer listen to it later. Let's see which one of us can recommend divorce more advantageously. I said that and took out the voice recorder that I had been recording until now.
I got tired of the busy daily life, and then Cecilia from the same company started to look very cute to me. I knew it was wrong. I should have divorced Vivian before cheating. I'm really sorry. And I don't need Daisy and Annabelle's custody. I want to live quietly with Cecilia from now on.
He apologized, but he still cheated on me, and he didn't care about our daughters. Then you'll pay for the infidelity compensation and Daisy and Annabelle's child support every month. Even if you say you're giving up custody, they're still your children. Paying child support is your duty as a parent. Then,
I know that. I just don't want to live with them. But I think they're cute. I'll pay child support, so I want to see them occasionally.
You can't do that. You're going to cheat because you hate Daisy and Annabelle, right? That's too selfish of you. Well, I'll explain this to Daisy and Annabelle and let you see them if they want to, but... My husband slumped down. And then I said, let's decide the amount of compensation for the divorce through a lawyer later. And as for the matter of you trying to kill me, I'm not going to settle or anything, so you better pay for your crime. And the compensation for the pain you caused me will be added to the compensation for the affair, so be prepared." My husband seemed to lower his head even more. Then I turned to Cecilia. "You've been acting cool since a while ago, but you're going to be arrested by the police too. And I'm going to make you pay the compensation for the affair too, so you better be prepared." Cecilia had no choice but to slump down too. The rest of the story. My husband and Cecilia were taken away by the police after I submitted the complaint and the voice recorder data. I think they will probably be arrested for attempted murder. They won't be able to avoid going to prison once the sentence is confirmed. Before that, I divorced my husband. The compensation I received from my ex-husband and Cecilia was quite a large amount. And the monthly child support my ex-husband had to pay for 2 children was $800 a month. How hard it must be to pay this amount while paying back the debt of compensation that he and Cecilia chose. By the way, my ex-in-laws were completely on my side and they said they cut off their ties with their son. This means that my ex-husband has no one to rely on anymore. Well, I hope he remarries Cecilia or something and keeps paying the child support. As for me, I decided to go back to my parents' house with Daisy and Annabelle. It took a little longer to commute from my parents' house, but I still managed to make it, so I decided to do my best. I told Daisy and Annabelle the reason for divorcing my ex-husband as much as they could understand. And then I asked them if they still wanted to see their father, and they both said they didn't want to see him anymore, so I decided not to let them see him. I thought they must have felt something when he tried to kill me once. I hope I can live with my 2 daughters and give them enough love with my parents from now on.
How did you like this story? Please also subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.
Mom, I got into an accident.
Jack, is it really Jack?
Mom, please help me. I'll be arrested if I don't get help.
My daughter-in-law played the role of a mother over the phone with a realistic performance. Someone claiming to be Jack responded on the other end of the line. I witnessed a scam for the first time and was left speechless. I continue to stroke my beloved cat's head in silence. My name is Mary, and I am 67 years old. I'm living in the countryside with the money my husband left me in my pension. My husband passed away suddenly 3 years ago, leaving me behind in a large house in the countryside with only 1 cat. Although I was left behind, I couldn't bear to leave my familiar home and have been living a quiet life ever since. I have 2 adult sons, both of whom graduated from all-boys schools and chose careers in science and engineering. I had given up hope of ever having grandchildren since they both seemed to have no relationship with women. One day, my eldest son Michael, who had just turned 38, suddenly came to me with a young and beautiful woman named Mia and announced that they were getting married. I was shocked to learn that she was only 25 years old. How did my shy son manage to win the heart of such a young and beautiful woman? The 2 of them quickly filed their marriage papers and even had a photo wedding overseas. Is this what people do these days? I couldn't shake off my doubts, but I could only watch over the newlyweds. Since my son and daughter-in-law rented an apartment in the neighboring town, they often visited me on weekends. Perhaps they were worried about me living alone in a big house. Although my daughter-in-law always came with my son, she never looked me in the eye. Even when I tried to start a conversation, she only gave me simple answers like yes or no, and our conversations always ended quickly. My son was also a man of few words, so I had to rely on the sound of the TV to fill the awkward silence. I told my son several times that they didn't have to come visit me if it was too much trouble, but he only said,
"Well, Mia wants to see you."
I was afraid that if I told her directly that she didn't have to come, she might misunderstand me. Every weekend, I felt a knot in my stomach as I waited for them to arrive. My friend Karen was worried about my relationship with my son and daughter-in-law. She also had a bad relationship with her daughter-in-law.
I'm sorry to say this, but your son has no taste in women. It's not just about being young. This is why men are.
Well, but she always eats the food I make and cleans up the dishes, so I don't think she's a bad person.
Even children can do that. If she's a daughter-in-law, she should come to her husband's family and do housework and be a conversation partner for her mother-in-law, right?
Is that so? Is this the relationship between daughters-in-law and mothers-in-law in the world? I like cooking, so I don't mind treating my son and daughter-in-law to a feast, but...
You're too kind. Isn't she from a single-parent family? She hasn't learned the common sense of society. You should be more assertive.
I was confused by my friend's repeated heavy breathing and assertive comments. Yes, my daughter-in-law is from a single-parent family. Apparently, her parents divorced when she was too young to remember, and her mother raised her alone. Since she didn't see her parents' married life, there may be things she doesn't understand. I wonder how I can have a healthy relationship with her? If I express my weakness like this, I'll probably be scolded again by my friend who always says,
"You're too kind."
However, I always try to find a peaceful solution to conflicts. One day, while I was struggling with these thoughts, an incident occurred. It was a weekday, and my daughter-in-law, who had a rare day off, came to my house alone. She spoke in a small voice, so I couldn't hear her well, but it seems she brought some vegetables she received from her workplace to share with me. I don't know if it was her intention or my son's instruction, but I couldn't just send her back after she came all the way to visit me on her day off. So we decided to have tea in the living room. Suddenly, the landline phone in my house rang. Nowadays, with cell phones being so common, the only people who would call the landline were my friend Karen or some relatives. So I answered the phone casually, but the person on the other end was unexpected.
Is this the Smith residence? This is the police.
What? Police? I shouted in surprise at the word police. My daughter-in-law was also startled and looked at me. What do the police want with me?
Well, you see, your son got into a traffic accident on his way to work. The victim was seriously injured and taken to the hospital.
A traffic accident?
He hit a pedestrian crossing the street, so he will be subject to a very severe punishment.
That's terrible. Hitting a pedestrian on a crosswalk. I was shocked and speechless. The man claiming to be a police officer continued to speak in a calm tone.
However, the victim's family are kind people, and they won't press charges if the matter can be resolved with money.
Is that so? Based on the situation, my son was definitely in the wrong. I had mixed feelings of gratitude and guilt towards the victim's generous offer, and my thoughts were spinning around in my head.
However, your son has not joined any optional insurance, and it seems that he cannot raise enough money, so you need to prepare about $35,000 for your son.
Yes, $35,000. Huh? I gasped at the number of $35,000. Is the amount reasonable? But before that, Something is wrong somewhere. Not enrolled in optional insurance? That's impossible. After all, my sons request annual enrollment from my acquaintance's insurance agency. Huh? Which one caused the accident, the eldest son or the second son? Since the eldest son's wife is here, I had assumed that the second son had caused the accident. Excuse me, is the person there really my son? The man on the phone sighed heavily in response to my timid question.
I understand that you don't want to accept reality. But Jack did cause the accident.
Jack?
Mew.
My beloved cat, who was curled up beside me, raised its head and rubbed against my leg. Jack.
Mew. Her.
Yeah, Jack is a cat. So, what is this phone call about? My daughter-in-law conveyed to me through her smartphone screen to please switch to a call with Jack himself. Can I speak with Jack, please?
I understand. Just for a little while.
While the other person was on hold, my daughter-in-law quickly picked up my receiver. She then began talking to a man claiming to be Jack on the other end of the phone. He sniffed.
Mom.
Jack, is it really you? Why did you get into an accident?
I'm sorry. I didn't notice the pedestrian while playing with my smartphone.
He sniffled.
Well,
Please, Mom. I need money. Otherwise, I'll go to jail.
I understand. I will take care of it.
Mom. Thank you.
I was overwhelmed by my daughter-in-law's realistic performance. It seemed that the man on the other end of the phone had been replaced by the fake cop, so I quickly switched to the phone with my daughter-in-law and went along with the fake cop's story about how to deal with the situation. When the call ended, my daughter-in-law sighed.
It's a typical scam.
I knew it. Oh, but wait. You said you would prepare the money, right?
Yes, I'll contact the real police now. If the fake cop comes, please do your best to act.
Acting? That's impossible. I panicked, but my daughter-in-law firmly held my hand.
It's okay, I'm with you.
Mia. My daughter-in-law didn't look me in the eye and our conversation didn't go well. When I thought about it, it was strange that she visited my house alone at this timing. Can I trust what she says? My friend's warning to be careful with your daughter-in-law also crossed my mind. However, I wanted to believe in my son's innocence and in the woman he chose. Okay, I understand. I made up my mind and decided to trust my daughter-in-law. At the appointed time, 2 fake cops rang the intercom at my house.
This is the police. We've come to collect the settlement money.
Yes. I timidly showed my face, and the 2 men loosened their lips with a triumphant expression. But, is it really Jack? He's so serious and cute. It's hard to believe that Jack caused an accident.
You still don't believe it? Look at this. It's Jack Smith's arrest warrant. If you don't prepare the settlement money right away, we'll have to execute this.
The document presented had Jack Smith written on it. Well, Jack, you're driving without a license.
Mew?
Jack, who was at my feet, approached me with a meowing voice. But the fake cop didn't notice anything.
Without a license? That's even worse.
Jack, you're driving with those cute little hands of yours.
Mew.
Huh?
The fake cop felt something was off about my words and gaze, and looked down at Jack. Jack, are you hungry? Shall I feed you?
Mew.
I held Jack, who was excited by the word food, and faced the fake cop. This is our third son, Jack Smith.
What?
The fake cop jumped up in surprise. I lifted Jack's front paw and said with a sarcastic smile, I'm sorry for causing an accident, Mew. The fake cops were red-faced after being hit by a huge boomerang. One of them said,
What are you talking about? You're deceiving the police.
I replied, but you said Jack caused the accident.
You old fool. Deceiving the police is a serious crime. You'll be fined.
You are the ones deceiving us.
What?
At that moment, my daughter-in-law and a real police officer who were waiting in the living room jumped out.
You guys are the ones deceiving us with such a random phone call. It's funny that you actually came to our house.
What? No way.
Let's hear the details at the police station.
The fraudsters tried to leave the entrance in a hurry, but they were stopped by another unit waiting outside.
No way.
The police officer surrounded the fraudsters who were sitting down in despair. While looking at it, I took a deep breath and said, Oh, my heart is pounding.
You were like a leading actress.
That's because the scenario and acting guidance were good. My daughter-in-law chuckled at my response. I smiled with my daughter-in-law. Her smile was very cute, and it was the first time I had seen it. However, the incident was not over yet. Just as we finished the police questioning and returned home, the intercom rang loudly. On the monitor, Karen, my friend, was standing in a fierce pose. I opened the door with determination because I expected this to happen due to the police's story.
My son was taken away by the police because of you. You deceived him and called him to this house. Clear up the misunderstanding.
She started off with this. Yes, one of the two fraudsters was Karen's son. I heard that Karen's son and his wife got divorced because of Karen's bullying of her daughter-in-law and his cheating, and he was sued for a large amount of compensation by his ex-wife. It seemed that his divorce caused a scandal involving his company, and he was fired and couldn't find a new job, and he was in a lot of financial trouble. At that time, Karen told her son that I was a kind-hearted old lady living alone with my husband's inheritance and that I had two sons. Karen's son, who was blinded by money, then planned this crime with his friend. The reason why our family information was subtly leaked was because it was a crime committed by someone close. The plan was sloppy because it was thought up by amateurs. It seems that Karen did not lend a hand, but it is true that her son came up with a crime from her gossip. Even so, I was going to forgive her if she apologized for her son's wrongdoing. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to work that way. Her eyes were filled with hatred, and she pointed her blade at me. I didn't deceive you. I just reported it to the police because I thought it was a fraud.
If you had told me from the beginning that Jack was a cat, my son would have given up on the fraud.
We don't need such compassion for swindlers.
No.
She stomped her feet in frustration.
My son and I are in trouble. If you're a friend, please help us with some money.
She was screaming something that didn't make sense. I won't waste the money my husband worked hard to leave behind by helping criminals or people without morals.
No way. That's not fair. Why are you the only one who's so lucky? My ex-daughter-in-law has no manners, so I just tried to discipline her a little, but she ran away. And my son's infidelity is a sign of his manhood. It's unfair.
Huh?
I thought you were a poor woman living on a pension who couldn't even have any grandchildren, so I was being nice to you. But your son got a young wife, and you have a lot of your husband's inheritance.
I had been looked down upon like this by her I trusted as a friend. Shock and anger welled up inside me. Don't treat my daughter like an object.
That's what I hate about you hypocrites.
She looked up at the sky and howled like a wolf.
Give me money. $35,000. Quickly. Your friend is in trouble.
I'm not your friend anymore.
No way. If you get too cocky, you'll regret it. Be prepared.
Is that a threat?
A threat? Humph. If you want to know if it's a threat or not, why don't you try walking alone on the streets at night?
I see. I'm naive and too trusting, so I'm not used to this kind of thing. That's why I'll report everything you just said to the police.
Huh?
Time seemed to stand still as her face froze in a demonic expression. At that moment, my daughter-in-law appeared from the living room and shook her smartphone.
I recorded your scary threats perfectly.
Karen's face turned pale in an instant.
You set me up, didn't you?
You dug your own grave?
You are being taken advantage of by her who grew up with a single parent like that.
Even if both parents are present, there's always a chance that their child will grow up to be a criminal like your son.
No.
She let out a final scream and ran away. After that, I sat down with my son and daughter-in-law and talked for a long time. It turns out that my daughter-in-law had been trying hard to find a way to get close to me. She grew up in a single-parent household and had grown tired of her mother, who kept moving from man to man. Despite this, she felt a motherly love for me, her husband's mother.
I was really happy when you talked to me and made delicious food for me. But I don't have any education or common sense, so I'm always worried about being rude or disliked.
Mia. It seems that even when she was young and living alone, she had honed her skills to fend off solicitation calls, which helped her act as my substitute during a phone scam. She also came to my house alone for the first time because she was worried about a suspicious man who had been looking at our house the day before. I hugged her tightly, feeling her awkwardness and shyness, which were more pronounced than mine, despite her being a size larger than me. Thank you. I'm really happy that a strong and kind person like you became my daughter-in-law.
Mom.
Yeah, Mia is a good girl, and Mom is kind. I thought you two would get along.
I glared at my son, who nodded in satisfaction. You need to learn to be more considerate of others. Mia, don't hesitate to do what you want.
I'm sorry.
As my son scratched his head, my daughter-in-law giggled. I wish from the bottom of my heart that I would see that smile many times in the future. 5 years later.
Jack, let's play.
Come down.
Mew.
Afraid of being jostled by my grandchildren, Jack ran up to the top of the refrigerator.
Jack, calm down.
Come here.
Mew.
Jack's dutifulness in answering when called by name was still the same. As I watched this scene with a smile, my daughter-in-law spoke to me.
Mom, I heard that there have been many phone scams in the city recently. Are you okay?
I'm fine. If Jack gets another call, I'll just chase them away with a bang.
Oh, Mom.
My daughter-in-law laughed heartily. I laughed along with her. Jack, who thought he was being called, responded with a good mew.
How was this story? Please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.
Oh, where are you now? We've already arrived at the hotel.
I was filled with anger at my mother-in-law's irritating words. Please stop it. Did you invite me with that intention from the beginning?
Don't say such things. I didn't realize you weren't here.
That's not true.
It's too late to come and pick you up now. Why don't you camp out there alone?
That's hilarious. Do it.
I could hear my sister-in-law's voice over the phone. My father-in-law and Cyrus are probably not nearby now.
It's a family trip, so don't bother us.
You're a nuisance when you're around.
They shouldn't have invited me in the first place if they were going to do something like this. My name is Valentina, and I'm a 26-year-old housewife. My husband, Cyrus, was originally my senior at work. I was attracted to his reliable and capable work, and we started dating, which led to marriage after a few years. Soon after we got married, we decided to live with my in-laws. I really wanted to live with just the two of us, but my mother-in-law suggested it.
Since you're coming to be my daughter-in-law, it's only natural that you live with us.
That's not relevant nowadays, is it? Both of you are still healthy.
Cyrus said that, but I couldn't refuse too strongly. I wanted to get along with my in-laws, and I didn't want to argue with my mother-in-law right after getting married. I decided to do as my mother-in-law said and nodded. I'm okay with living together.
Really? Well, if Valentina says so, I'm okay with it too.
Okay then. Nice to meet you, Valentina.
But looking back now, I should have refused with Cyrus at that time. Because since we started living together, I've been bullied by my mother-in-law almost every day.
Valentina, have you taken out the garbage?
No, not yet.
Why haven't you done it yet?
I was planning to do it all at once after finishing the morning cleaning.
Don't do whatever you want. You have to follow our way of doing things.
I thought I was acting efficiently to help in any way I could, but to my mother-in-law, I must have looked like an uncooperative daughter-in-law. I'm sorry. I'll take out the garbage right away.
This isn't your home. You have to follow our way of doing things.
Okay.
After taking out the garbage, you also need to clean the toilet, the bath, and do the dishes. You're a housewife, but you can't even do housework properly?
My mother-in-law complained like that, pushed all the housework onto me, and started watching a movie she had recorded while lying down on the sofa. I thought we would share the housework, but did my mother-in-law intend to push everything onto me from the beginning when she suggested we live together? I had no choice but to put up with it and do the housework every day, even though I thought it was unfair. And there's another person who harasses me. It's my sister-in-law, Cecilia. Cecilia graduated from college but hasn't found a job and has been living at home, playing every day. My mother-in-law seems to be very fond of her and spoils her. I didn't want to interfere with her situation, so I didn't mind at first. However, Cecilia began to treat me like a servant.
I want you to drive me to the station because I'm going to hang out with my friends today.
What? Now? Even though it was obvious that I was busy with housework, she asked me to do this. The station wasn't far away, so I could go there alone if I wanted to walk, but Cecilia always asked me to drive her. Can I do it after I finish hanging the laundry?
That would make me late for my appointment.
Cecilia's requests were always sudden. Okay. It would be helpful if you could tell me a little earlier next time. I also have my own schedule. I smiled, suppressing my anger at Cecilia's attitude of asking for things without considering my situation.
It was decided suddenly.
Cecilia answered without looking at me, staring at her phone. Is this how you ask someone for a favor? She's already an adult. I couldn't suppress my irritation with Cecilia, but I didn't show it on my face and took her to the station.
I'll probably be back around 10 p.m.
Cecilia only told me her return schedule without thanking me for the ride. She speaks as if it's natural for me to pick her up, but couldn't she at least show some gratitude? Does she still think I'm some kind of servant or something? But since I'm not related by blood, I can't get angry with Cecilia. If I make even a slight sarcastic remark, she'll probably report it to my mother-in-law. And then I'll get a lecture from her. That would be a hassle. I don't want to cause any trouble. So I had no choice but to put up with Cecilia's selfishness and listen to her. When I returned home with a sense of frustration, my mother-in-law yelled at me.
Hey! The laundry isn't done yet. Hang it up right away after you're done washing it. Otherwise, it'll smell.
I asked Cecilia if it was okay to do it after the laundry was finished, considering that she was going to be late. But I had to interrupt my work and take her because she said she would be late. Nevertheless, my mother-in-law was angry with me. It's really unreasonable.
Why can't you do housework in order?
I have to take Cecilia to the station.
No excuses. Do the laundry again.
In the end, I had to start the laundry all over again. I sighed and went back to doing housework. During the day, I'm being bossed around by my mother-in-law and Cecilia every day. But when Cyrus and my father-in-law come home from work, my mother-in-law's attitude changes completely.
Valentina, thank you for your hard work today. Thanks to you, the housework went smoothly.
She says such things with a smile. At first, I was confused by this change in attitude, but now I'm used to it.
How was dinner today? I made it while Valentina was teaching me. Is it delicious?
Yeah, it's delicious. The flavor is just right.
Really? I'm glad.
She probably doesn't want Cyrus and my father-in-law to think that she's pushing all the housework onto me. She speaks about cooking as if she made it herself. And in front of the two of them, my mother-in-law and Cecilia pretend to get along with me. Because of this, Cyrus and my father-in-law don't realize that I'm being bullied by the two of them. I've thought about consulting him about my mother-in-law and Cecilia several times, but I've always held back. Cyrus was close to both my mother-in-law and Cecilia, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything that would ruin the family relationship. But unfortunately, my faint hope that things would get better if I just put up with it never came true, and the harassment only escalated.
I wonder why Cyrus chose Valentina.
Cyrus has never had a good eye for people, so maybe he chose the wrong person?
Poor thing.
Recently, I've heard such backbiting comments that I can hear. As usual, the attitudes of the two have not changed, and Cecilia treats me like a servant and makes selfish demands. My mother-in-law pushes housework onto me and has recently started going shopping. Nevertheless, I didn't complain and managed to get by somehow. Then one day, Cecilia suddenly started saying that she wanted to go on a family trip.
How about going on a trip? We haven't gone as a family recently, have we?
That's a good idea. I was just thinking about wanting to go too.
The two of them invited my father-in-law and Cyrus with shining eyes.
A trip. Huh?
Right? It's good, isn't it? Even Dad must be tired. Go on a trip and relax.
That's right. Should we go on our next day off?
Let's do it.
It's something that Cecilia and mother-in-law have suggested anyway. I'll probably be left behind because I'm not just a family member. I thought that and didn't participate in the conversation. Then Cecilia asked me,
Valentina, you're going too, right?
Huh? Me too?
Of course. We're family.
Valentina should go too. She always works hard at housework.
I have a bad feeling about the two of them.
That's right. Valentina, don't hesitate and come with us.
In the end, I decided to participate in the trip because Cyrus said so, even though the two of them suggested it. On the day of the trip, Cyrus was driving, so I sat in the passenger seat. Since my father-in-law and Cyrus were also there today, I was relieved that they wouldn't blatantly harass me. I was so relieved. However, the incident occurred when we stopped at a rest area. On the way to the hotel on the highway, Cecilia started saying that she wanted to go to the restroom.
Huh? But we'll arrive at the hotel soon. It's just around the corner if we get off at the next exit.
Just stop at the rest area.
Okay.
Since she couldn't hold it, we had no choice but to stop at the rest area. Cecilia, my father-in-law, and Cyrus went to the restroom together, and my mother-in-law got off to throw away empty plastic bottles and trash. I didn't particularly want to go to the restroom, so I decided to wait in the car. When my mother-in-law finished throwing away the trash and returned to the car.
You should go to the restroom too.
No, I'm fine.
There's no more restroom ahead.
But Cyrus said we're already arriving at the hotel. Despite my refusal, my mother-in-law is trying to make me go to the restroom.
That's true, but it'll take a little longer. It would be a nuisance if you said you wanted to go to the restroom during that time, so go now.
I understand. My mother-in-law was so persistent that I reluctantly went to the restroom. I hurried to move so as not to keep everyone waiting. When I returned to the car as soon as possible, The car was no longer parked where it had been parked until a while ago. What's going on? I was stunned for a while, but I finally understood. I was left behind in a rest area with nothing. I panicked and tried to contact Cyrus, but the phone didn't connect. He probably didn't notice because he was driving. I called my mother-in-law, but she didn't answer the phone either. A small rest area with nothing but a restroom. I was full of miserable feelings after being left behind in such a place. If I was going to be harassed like this, I should have refused the trip from the beginning. Then, 30 minutes later, my mother-in-law called me.
Oh, where are you now? We've already arrived at the hotel.
I was filled with anger at my mother-in-law's irritating words. Please stop it. Did you invite me with that intention from the beginning?
Don't say such things. I didn't realize you weren't here.
That's not true.
It's too late to come and pick you up now. Why don't you camp out there alone?
That's hilarious. Do it.
I could hear Cecilia's voice over the phone. My father-in-law and Cyrus are probably not nearby now.
It's a family trip, so don't bother us.
You're a nuisance when you're around.
They shouldn't have invited me in the first place if they were going to do something like this.
Don't come here. Catch a taxi or something and go back to your parents' house.
Even if you say taxi, this is a highway, you know?
Then why don't you hitchhike? Well, no one comes to such a deserted rest area anyway.
That's why we won't call you anymore. We'll explain it to Cyrus and your father properly.
My mother-in-law unilaterally hung up the phone after saying that. What should I do now? When I was at a loss, a familiar car arrived. Huh? Cyrus?
Sorry.
The car was driven by Cyrus and my father-in-law. The two of them, who I thought had been skillfully manipulated by my mother-in-law, came to pick me up. Why did you come?
Actually, I knew.
They were harassing Valentina, and they were planning to leave Valentina behind today.
What do you mean? According to the story of my father-in-law and Cyrus, they had actually noticed that I was being bullied by them for some time. My father-in-law had even warned my mother-in-law to get along with me many times, but my mother-in-law stubbornly insisted that we were getting along well. In addition, since I didn't consult with anyone, they couldn't be sure if I was really being bullied. However, a few days ago, they happened to hear that my mother-in-law and Cecilia were planning to leave me behind, and finally became convinced.
So my father and I planned to punish my mother and Cecilia instead.
What kind of plan?
Leave the two of them behind at the hotel and let's go home.
What? I was surprised because I never thought that they would think of such a thing.
So we pretended to go along with my mother's act and left Valentina behind, even though I'm sorry for Valentina.
But even so, isn't it strange that my mother said that Valentina met her friend and decided to go on a trip with her?
Yes.
I see.
They seem to think that we will pay for everything, and they didn't even bring their wallets. They'll be in trouble when we leave.
Is it okay to do that? I was happy that they said that, but if they took my side, the relationship between the family would be completely ruined. However, Cyrus laughed nonchalantly despite my anxiety.
It's okay. My father and I were dissatisfied with those two from the beginning. And I won't forgive them for hurting Valentina.
I cried out of happiness and relief.
I'm sorry until now. I couldn't help you even though you were suffering.
But I know Valentina was the one who had been cooking until now. She said she made it herself, but her cooking isn't that good, so I noticed.
My father-in-law also said that and smiled kindly. So we left my mother-in-law and Cecilia behind at the hotel and went back to my in-laws' house. By the time we got home, my mother-in-law finally called Cyrus. But Cyrus ignored it. Then my father-in-law received a call, but he ignored it too. Then I received a call.
Where are you now?
My mother-in-law shouted. I'm already home, I replied.
How did you get home?
Cyrus and my father-in-law came to pick me up, so I was able to come home.
What? How did that happen?
My mother-in-law started shouting, so I handed the phone over to Cyrus.
I know that you've been harassing Valentina until now. And I knew you were planning to leave Valentina behind at the rest stop this time.
What?
Also, I know that you've been tricking money out of me and my father for a while.
No, that's not true.
My mother-in-law was flustered on the phone. Apparently, the two of them had been asking for money from my father-in-law and Cyrus by making up various reasons. And they had been buying whatever they wanted with that money.
Cyrus and I have had enough. Neither of you should ever come back.
Finally, my father-in-law said that and hung up the phone. After that, the two of them called us many times, but we didn't answer. The two of them who couldn't return from the hotel left secretly in the middle of the night and returned home by taxi. Since they didn't have any money, Cyrus and my father-in-law had to pay for the hotel and taxi. In exchange, they decided to kick the two of them out of the house. The two of them cried to me until the end, but of course I couldn't forgive them.
I'll never forget what you did to me, and I won't forgive you. What are we supposed to do now? We don't even have jobs.
That's why you should work. Is Cecilia planning to stay unemployed forever? We sent her to college, and she's still not working.
Well, that's...
From now on, live on your own strength.
After that, my father-in-law divorced my mother-in-law and cut off ties with Cecilia. Now they live in a shabby apartment, working part-time jobs and living a frugal life. On the other hand, I live a relaxed life with my father-in-law and Cyrus. I enjoy doing housework without being harassed. I am truly grateful to my father-in-law and Cyrus for choosing me over my mother-in-law and Cecilia.
How was today's story? Please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.